Hi everybody, my name is Larsen. If you think about it, then you probably have a really strong idea about when you listen to a musical phrase, whether it's a blues phrase or not. So in that way, you know blues as a musical language. You have an idea about when something sounds like blues, what belongs in there and what doesn't belong in there, what should be in there and what definitely should not be in there. And if you're starting to check out some jazz music, then you're probably also realizing that jazz is in the same way a complete musical language. So there are certain rules about how the phrases move, where you put the notes, and which notes you choose over which chords. And that really makes up jazz as a language. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. What is bebop language? And you probably already have an idea about what a bebop line should sound like. So there are going to be certain things that fit within the style. There are going to be a certain flow in the lines and also certain notes that you can use on the chords, certain types of phrasing that work and some that don't. For any style of music or any genre that you're studying, then there are going to be some habits or traditions when it comes to the melody. So if you're trying to learn bebop as a language, then you're probably going to be using some diminished arpeggios on dominant chords, and you're going to play arpeggios as triplets and stuff like that, but you're not going to be using superimposed pentatonics really a lot, or maybe whole step bends or other things that really belong in other genres. Of course, there's a lot more to it than just picking the right scale to use over a chord. I think that it's much more about the kind of melody that you make, what is allowed within that melody, how do you get the right rhythm and the right phrasing out in your phrase. And those kind of things are a little bit hard to describe in rules. I have other videos where I'm talking about different aspects of this, and I'll link to a playlist with some of those videos in the description of this video. So instead I'm going to focus on how you work on this and how you practice this, because I think that's a better way for you to check out how to get bebop as a language into your playing and into your ears. Should you learn bebop? My playing isn't 100% bebop, in the same way that if you listen to Wes Montgomery, I would also say that that is also not 100% bebop. But if you listen to my playing, you can also hear a very strong influence from bebop. And for me, part of being able to play jazz is also that you can sometimes hear lines that are clearly using sort of the bebop flow and that way of making melodies, and that's really a defining character in the style. That's also why I think it's important to check out bebop. Bebop is the first time in jazz when we reduced songs down to just a chord progression and then really improvise from those chord progressions. And that created a really strong, really specific musical language that has been a part of jazz ever since, and is also a part of every modern jazz style, even free jazz, if you listen to somebody like Ornette Coleman. Studying bebop language. If we think about bebop as a language, then it's also quite clear that it's not going to be enough to just learn what arpeggios go on a D-7 or how to add a chromatic leading note between two notes in the scale. We need to approach this in a different way, because it's as much about recognizing it and having it in our ears as it is about knowing what to play on the chords. So that's also what I'm going to focus on here. The 4 approaches to working on this that I'm going to cover are probably things that you're already doing, and you can use it as a sort of checklist, because maybe there's something you're not doing, or maybe there's a way that you're working with it that could be better, or maybe even you have a better way of working on it that I'm talking about here. Then you can just leave a comment. But that's really what this is about. This is about different ways to really internalize a bebop language, and not just about learning a few licks. But of course, if you want to check out some of the building blocks that make up the bebop language in terms of what arpeggios and what chromatic leading notes and enclosures, then you can check out the playlist in the description of this video. For me, the study of bebop was never really about learning bebop scales, because I think bebop scales was something that was invented a lot later to sell books, and not really something that was a part of the style from the beginning when people were really playing that style. I think that's also a point of view that I actually share with Barry Harris. Listening. This is of course something that I've said before when it comes to studying music. If you want to learn a style of music like bebop, you have to listen to it. It's really important that you listen to it so you get it into your ears. You're not going to learn bebop if you learn a few bebop licks or maybe a single solo and then spend all your time listening to Metallica, John Denver and Steely Dan. That's just not going to cut it. But on the other hand, if you want to learn bebop, then hopefully it's also a kind of music that you like, and then you also want to listen to people like Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, Monk, Barry Harris, And there's a lot of great music there, so it's not going to be really difficult to get into, I think. It is very important that you develop and strengthen your concept of what bebop sounds like, and it's pretty easy to do this if you listen a lot to it. Analyzing transcriptions. A great exercise for developing your bebop vocabulary and also to find out things that you want to practice to get into your vocabulary is to analyze solos. And when it comes to bebop, I would say it makes a lot of sense to also just sit down and analyze some transcriptions. Now, you can find a lot of transcriptions online. You can of course also use the Charlie Parker Omnibook. I think Parker is probably the obvious choice to check out if you want to check out bebop, but you should also check out other people like Bud Powell and Dizzy Gillespie, because they're worthwhile checking out and just having a broader view of what is being played. When you're analyzing a transcription, then look at what scales are used on the chords, what arpeggios are being used on the chords, where is the chromaticism used, what kind of rhythms are used, and also what kind of chord substitutions are you going to come across. And of course, it's also really useful to actually learn how to play these transcriptions, because you do really learn a lot more from being able to play them and feel how it is to phrase them in the right way. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that I have a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting the channel. I'm very grateful for their support, and it's because of them that I can keep on making all these very specific jazz guitar and jazz theory videos. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. And if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. Transcribing. Besides analyzing, I think you also really want to transcribe some solos yourself. When you're working on figuring out what is being played on a recording, then you're going to be listening to it so much and so intensely that learning the phrasing and learning the flow is going to be a lot easier. And it's actually a very efficient way to get that into your ears. So in that way, working with transcription can be more efficient than just analyzing and learning solos that are already written down. And you're probably going to get the best results if you also learn how to play the solo that you're transcribing in time, and maybe even at the tempo of the original recording, even though that can be a little bit difficult. And this is because that is really where your musical memory and your phrasing and your ability to hear the language and your technique is all going to come together, and that's where you can really internalize and get the language into your playing. Composing. If you've seen some of my other videos, you're probably aware that I find that composition is sort of the underrated tool when it comes to learning how to improvise. But actually, when it comes to bebop, I think composition is a part of the tradition when it comes to learning. Because if you've ever been to a Barry Harris workshop, then what he does there is that he'll choose a chord progression, so some tune, and then he'll start composing a solo on it. And while he's composing it, he will talk about the different melodies, the scale choices, the devices he's using, how he's adding chromaticism, and all the things that in that way, while the students are learning how to play the solo that he's composing, they also get some ideas on how to compose their own lines and learn how the lines are constructed. And that's a very efficient way of learning this. So you also want to do that for yourself. So if you have a small phrase that you think sounds great from a bebop solo, then make sure to compose 2-5-1 licks or use it a lot on a blues and come up with different ways of using it, connected with all the different things that you already have in your vocabulary, and in that way you can get it into your playing. If you want to check out another video where I'm discussing some of the different building blocks that make up a bebop line, then check out this video where I go over 3 different licks and then also show how you can compose your own licks derived from some of those devices. If this is the first time you see one of my videos and you want to learn more about jazz guitar, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.